Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Porter is firm that tremendous Errol Spence fight will happen. At a recent media day he held at his Las Vegas training camp, Porter said that he considers himself the number 2 welterweight in the world at the moment. It's hard to put Keith Thurman in there. He's been inactive. There is no need to even say that. We all know that. I go right above Keith. Errol Spence has been the champion longer. Errol Spence, Sean Porter, then we get it going. Porter told BoxingScene.com. A fight that a lot of fans would like to see is Spence versus Porter. Spence has had trouble luring the big names in the ring with him. We don't back down. I think it is the same with me and him. You see our competitive drive and our heart round after round. Everybody was expecting big things out of me and Keith Thurman, and we answered that bell, and I think the same will go for myself and Errol Spence. Obviously, we will have a game plan for him and figure out what he can do and can't do. We already know a great deal about him. I think it will be a tremendous fight, just like this one, between me and Danny Garcia, Porter explained. I think it's about time that Sean Porter started talking about himself and Errol Spence in that context. The context where they might actually fight. In the past, when Errol Spence's name was brought up to Sean Porter, to Kenny Porter,
his dad,
they made it kind of clear that he wasn't a guy that they had in their crosshairs. Some people didn't like this shit. Some people were wondering, why isn't Sean Porter trying to challenge Errol Spence for that IBF title? Nevertheless, it seems
that's changed.
that Team Porter might have shifted their focus. A big part of the reason that people want to see Errol Spence fight a guy like Sean Porter is because of Sean Porter's qualities as a fighter. This is a guy with a great engine, great work rate. He's very athletic. He's got some of the best punch resistance in the welterweight division. This guy is a mauler. And this is a guy who has the ingredients to give just about anybody in the welterweight division a long night. That's why people want to see him and Spence fight, because it makes for a very interesting situation. Particularly Spence, is he gonna continue to look so dominant when he faces a guy like Sean Porter, when he starts fighting that upper echelon of guys in the welterweight division? This is very much a fascinating, intriguing matchup because of the stylistic matchup and the physical attributes of both fighters. Who's gonna have the will and the skill to win that fight? Errol Spence, he's very good at maintaining space on the inside to get better leverage for his punches. That allows him to get quality shots that got a lot of power on him. Maintaining that bit of space on the inside allows Errol to get better leverage off of his punches, thus generating more power in the process. But what happens when it's Sean Porter? Sean Porter, who is notorious for not only smothering his own work, but his opponent's work. Because this guy's going to stay right up on you, right there with you on the inside, trying to rough you up. And it's going to be a little harder to maintain that space on the inside, to generate power, to generate leverage, when Sean Porter is effectively trying to invade that space, invade that bit of space,
to rough up his opponent,
the way he does characteristically, the way he did with Kell Brook, the way he did with Keith Thurman. Both of those fights were competitive fights. Win or lose, Sean Porter proved that he's got some elite level conditioning, elite level qualities that don't necessarily translate into his skill set, but his physicality as a competitor. That Sean's got a great engine, great chin, and with his bully style tactics, his bully style fighting, he has everything he needs to give almost anybody at 147 a real hard fucking time. It's an interesting situation, but the thing is, like most things in boxing, it's fluid.
How so?
It could change. Why? Sean Porter squaring off against Errol Spence hinges on Sean Porter making his way past Danny Garcia. And we don't know that Sean's gonna win that fight. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When this fight was originally proposed, I was leaning towards Sean Porter due to the timing. But anybody that follows this sport enough knows the importance of timing, the importance of the timing at which a fight is being staged. When the fight was originally proposed, I kind of liked Sean for the fight. But now, that it's taken so long, that Sean Porter has fought in, I believe, 2 WBC eliminators. I believe the fight is closer. And call me crazy, you can feel free to disagree, but I'm of the opinion that Mauricio Suleiman and the guys over there at the WBC, that they want to put that green belt in Danny Garcia's hands. I'm of the opinion that they would prefer that Danny get that belt instead of Sean. The reason for this is simple. Since losing to Keith Thurman, Sean Porter has fought Andre Berto and Adrian Granados. He's participated in, I believe, 2 WBC eliminators. Whereas, since Danny Garcia lost to Keith Thurman, he's only fought Brandon Rios. Yet somehow, Danny Garcia ends up ahead of Sean Porter in the ranks. Here's the twist. Where Sean Porter had to participate in eliminators, Danny Garcia got to have his pick of the litter in Brandon Rios. You know, he picked that fight. That was a voluntary. That was retroactively turned into a WBC eliminator after the fight was already made. That's saying that they let Danny pick who he wanted to fight, and then they called it an eliminator after the fact.
Exactly.
And all of this took place well after the WBC ordered these guys to fight, except they never actually fought. Yet somehow Danny Garcia ends up ahead of Sean Porter in the ranks. Sean Porter, who's already fought Andre Berto, who's already fought Adrian Granados.
Kept busy.
You put Danny Garcia in front of him for fighting and beating a guy that he picked.
Wow.
I find that very peculiar.
Don't y'all?
And with the fight itself potentially being a very close fight, because I think that the fight itself is going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be close. With the fight already being so close, and these peculiar decisions that the WBC has made, the peculiarity of their rankings, I'm of the opinion
They want to
that
give it to Danny.
maybe Mauricio Suleiman and the guys over there at the WBC, maybe they want to make it easier on Danny. Make it easier for Danny to get that green belt back. So back to my original point. Before we start worrying about Sean Porter versus Errol Spence, we need to be worrying about Sean Porter versus Danny Garcia, because he's going to have to get through him to get to Spence. It's conceivable that Spence is going to fight the winner of this fight between Sean and Danny. He's going to fight the winner.
Not the loser.
It's conceivable he gets the winner of that fight, but it's not a foregone conclusion that Sean Porter is going to be the winner of that fight. I'm of the opinion that there are some elements working against Sean. You know, I think that the fight itself is already going to be a close fight. I think the fight itself is already going to be a tough fight to score. That's the fight itself. But if you tack on the intangibles like how the WBC might want to really give that belt to Danny, you know, it's a fluid situation. It's an ever-changing situation. Before we start worrying about Sean versus Spence, we need to worry about Sean versus Danny, because that's got to come first, and Sean's got to make his way past Danny to get to Spence. And just speaking of Errol Spence and potential situations involving him, that potential fight between Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia, that fight might get tabled till 2019. And the reason that fight might get put on the shelf till 2019 is because the proposed heavyweight title fight between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, that proposed fight may end up pushing this fight into next year. Portion of the article reads, the bottom line is that for Showtime, it may not be feasible to have two pay-per-view events so close together before the end of 2018. That both of these fights being so close together, that might take away from the buy rate, it being that both fights are asking the boxing community to go into their wallets and pay per view. Well, they might not want to have to do that, you know, 2 times in the same month. They might not want to. And with it already being the holiday season, you know, boxing fans and just people in general forking over so much cash due to Christmas, you know, buying people shit, you know, it's just an inopportune time to ask the boxing fans to go into their wallets for a fight not once, but twice. And that potential hindrance, that component, that might incline the guys over there at Showtime to push the Garcia versus Spence fight, push that fight out into next year. And the statements corroborating these sentiments are coming from none other than Stephan Espinoza. So, you know, it's legit. At least that Showtime is being mindful of these two fights. The Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia fight and the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight. A fight that I'm still skeptical about. A fight that I'm not even sure that they're being legit. But, you know, like I said, we'll see. Time will tell the story. Time will tell us if that fight is actually going to take place. But I'll say this much.
Go on.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm of the opinion that Mikey Garcia don't need to be fighting Errol Spence and any more than Errol Spence needs to be targeting Canelo Alvarez. I don't think that either of those moves are you know, I don't think those are two moves that both of those guys need to make. I don't really get why Mikey Garcia is willing to go up there to 147 for Errol Spence when he can have a pay-per-view event with Vasyl Lomachenko. It might be a little harder to make. Maybe it's going to require some bipartisanship from Mikey over to Bob Arum and Top Rank. It might require some bipartisanship, but that is just as much a pay-per-view fight as the Spence fight, and that's a more winnable fight for Mikey than the Spence fight. I look at the Spence fight as Mikey Garcia courting certain disaster and potentially derailing his own career. It's not as simple as just losing the fight. You might lose the fight and never walk away the same again. You might not be the same guy you were after that fight. You may be irreparably damaged. What happens if the fight actually comes off and Mikey Garcia does climb in there with Errol Spence? What happens if he gets beat. If he gets beat bad. I don't think that Mikey Garcia loses a fight at 147 against Errol Spence and stays at 147.
No.
It's conceivable that if Mikey were to lose the fight, he'd go back down to 40 or 35.
It's likely.
Presumably 35, because 40 doesn't have as many big names as 35 does, at least not right now. You go all the way back down to 35, and you may not be the same guy. So even the potential matchups in that division, there's going to be a question mark. There's going to be an asterisk. Can Mikey Garcia, does he still have what it takes to beat these kinds of guys, having lost to Errol Spence? I'll tell you, it's a very similar situation to what Kell Brook experienced. Going up there with Gennady Golovkin, getting beat, then going back down 2 divisions to square off against Errol Spence.
Bad idea.
It's a situation like that to where, okay, well, you know what? You got to go back downstairs because you don't belong up here. You just got beat, and you got beat pretty bad, and you don't got what it takes to compete up here, so you got to go back downstairs. You go back downstairs, and you're not the same guy. You're hindered. You're damaged. That could happen to Mikey Garcia. I hate to say it. I know that, I'm a fan of the guy. I know that some of you guys, you might like Mikey Garcia too, but that's a possibility. That if this fight comes off, and he does fight Errol Spence, he could potentially derail his own career in doing so. That him getting what he claims he wants, that might be the worst thing that could happen to him. I'll tell you that Showtime pushing back this fight to 2019, that might give Team Mikey Garcia more time to think about whether or not they really want to do that. Whether or not they really want to go up there and try to challenge Errol Spence for his IBF title. Because all things considered, I can't see Mikey Garcia winning that fight.
No way.
Can you? So hopefully, if Showtime does push this thing back and keep it on the shelf till 2019, maybe that'll give Mikey Garcia the time he needs to think it over and reconsider.
Fights that could possibly made pound for pound are Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia and Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. How could we ever see those fights, Walter?
Again, Lomachenko is going to fight the winner of next week's fight between Beltran and Pedraza in December, and then we're very happy to talk with the Garcia people to do that fight as early as March of next year. I mean, there's no reason why that fight shouldn't be made. They're both the same weight, no problem. As far as Spence is concerned, I'd certainly like that fight to happen sometime next year.
What do you think when fans say, they put it on you and they say, this fight isn't happening because Bob doesn't want to work with Garcia or Bob doesn't want to work with Al?
That's ridiculous. The point is, when you do big fights, the fighters want a lot of money. And the question then is there money available on pay-per-view to satisfy both fighters? It has nothing to do with either Heyman or me. If the money is there, we're certainly going to do it.
Now, obviously, big fights that can be made, like Sean just said, would be Lomachenko, Garcia, and Spence, and Crawford. Now, Garcia just fought a few weeks ago, and he's calling out Crawford. He's calling out Spence. He wants that Spence fight.
That's up to him. I think it's a stupid fight for him.
Now, Bob Arum has since changed his tune a bit in reference to the Mikey Garcia versus Vasyl Lomachenko fight. A couple of months ago, they asked him about the fight, and he expressed that, if he doesn't want to get into a haggling situation. He doesn't want it to be another Mayweather-Pacquiao fiasco to where, guys are haggling a lot, it's taking too long. He doesn't want to end up in that situation. He said that a few months ago, but since that time, it sounds like he's changed his tune a bit, like he's more open to the idea, and he's more open to discussing it. And I think that Mikey Garcia should really take advantage of this. I think he needs to be exploring the Vasyl Lomachenko fight as an opportunity instead of worrying about Errol Spence, because I'm telling you, only certain disaster awaits Mikey Garcia if that fight actually comes off. Whereas the Vasyl Lomachenko fight is just as much a high-quality fight, a pay-per-view, a legitimate pay-per-view fight with legitimate pay-per-view possibilities. That's the fight that I think he really should be focusing on. Quite honestly, I don't know why he's not more focused on it. Maybe Mikey's mindset, maybe what Mikey's thinking is, I can go up there and dance, do the dance with Spence. And win or lose, the Vasyl Lomachenko fight will still be there. Yeah, maybe that fight will still be there, but you won't be in the same place. You may not be the same guy if you do go up there and you do fight Spence and you lose. You might not be the same guy, in which case, the better opportunity, the better use of Mikey Garcia's talents would be to square off against Vasyl Lomachenko, a pound-for-pound fighter, a champion in his division. They're both champions at 135. That's the fight that I think Mikey should be focusing on. I don't don't even view the Errol Spence fight as a fight that could be competitive for Mikey. I see it as possibly a one-sided beating that leaves him irreparably damaged. I'm hoping that, you know what, Mikey opens communications. You know, Team Garcia, they open communications with Uncle Bob. See if you guys can negotiate that fight for March of next year. You know, that's really what should be the focal point for Team Garcia. Not Errol fucking Spence. I'm sorry, but I just cannot see Mikey Garcia. I can't see that fight ending well for Mikey Garcia.